I'm Ella Mendez, 16 years old, standing in the hallway of Westwood High, clutching a crumpled notice that had been taped to my locker. Ms. Mendez, your locker requires cleaning. You have 3 days, or additional fees will apply. I stared at the words for a long time. Someone had sealed my locker shut from the outside with packing tape last week and stuffed it full of rotten apple cores and sour milk cartons. When I went to the janitor about it, he didn't even look up. Your locker, your problem. I peeled the tape off myself. I cleaned out the mess myself. And then this notice arrived, claiming the odor from my locker was affecting the entire row, demanding I address personal hygiene issues immediately. That night, I knelt in the bathroom scrubbing my hands for an hour. Brown juice from the rotting apples had worked its way under my nails, and I ran the water as hot as it would go, scalding my skin red. But I could still smell it, that sour, sweet, rotten smell that wouldn't wash off no matter how hard I tried. My mother was on the couch in the living room, just finishing her 3rd round of chemo. She watched me without saying anything, but I knew what her eyes meant. She'd been apologizing since my first week of high school, saying if she hadn't gotten sick, I could have transferred somewhere else, somewhere no one knew me, somewhere I could start fresh. I dried my hands and walked over, sitting down beside her. It's okay, I said. Only 2 years left. I can get through it. She put her hand on mine. Her fingers were so thin, the bones pressing against my skin. But to tell you about Westwood, I have to go further back. I was 13 when my dad fell off a scaffolding at a construction site. 3 broken ribs, 1 broken leg. The income stopped overnight. My mother was already starting to get sick back then, but she still pushed herself to work as a nursing home aide. I got a job bagging groceries after school and babysat for neighbors on weekends. I was small for my age, thin, and customers at the register sometimes mistook me for a child working illegally. Nobody at school knew any of this. I'd gotten into one of the best private middle schools in the city on a full academic scholarship. Good grades, quiet, never caused trouble. The teachers liked me because I never asked why we had so much homework, never complained about anything. It happened in the spring of 8th grade. A girl in my class named Katie Morrison, her father owned 3 pharmacy chains, the type of kid who'd been taking ballet since she was 4 and went to Europe for her birthdays, lost a bracelet. A Chanel bracelet, she said, a birthday gift from her mother. The whole class looked for it all day. Finally, Katie pointed at my locker. She's the poorest one here. She probably took it. The teacher called me into her office and closed the door. Did you take Katie's bracelet? No. Can you open your locker for us to check? I opened it. Inside were just textbooks, notebooks, and an old pair of sneakers. Katie stood beside me and said, "She probably hid it somewhere else. Who's dumb enough to leave it in their own locker?" That afternoon, Katie's mother came to the school and went straight to the principal. She said if the school couldn't resolve this properly, she'd make sure every parent knew about the management chaos and how even student valuables weren't safe. The principal suspended me for 3 days. "While we investigate," he said. I went home and found my mother in bed, squinting at the label on a prescription bottle. I buried the suspension notice at the bottom of my backpack, cooked some noodles, and brought them to her bedside. She asked how school was, and I said fine. I got an A on my math test. When I went back 3 days later, the way everyone looked at me had changed. The word thief clung to me like a tattoo I couldn't remove. Katie's bracelet eventually turned up in her own dance bag. She'd stuffed it in there while changing and forgotten about it. But she never told anyone. And the teachers, who knew, never said a word. I went to my homeroom teacher and asked if she could clear things up in class. She sat behind her desk, flipping through a lesson plan, and said, "The bracelet was found in her bag, sure. But that doesn't mean you didn't take it. Maybe someone put it back. Then why not investigate? Mendez. She looked up at me. Do you know how much Katie's father donated to build our library? I didn't say anything else. After school that day, 3 girls cornered me in the hallway, Katie's friends. They didn't hit me, but they shoved me against the lockers, knocked my bag out of my hands, and sent my books scattering across the floor. They stepped on my math textbook as they walked away, grinding their heels into the cover. Thieves belong where they belong. I crouched down and picked everything up. The math book had a shoe print stamped across the front. I rubbed at it with my finger, but it wouldn't come off. That night, I sat in my room and tried to erase the mark with a rubber eraser. I scrubbed so hard I tore through the paper. The print was still there, a dark smudge ghosting through the hole. I stared at it for a long time, then closed the book and shoved it to the bottom of my bag. My grades dropped from top 10 to somewhere in the middle that year. It wasn't that I'd forgotten how to do the work. It was that I couldn't stop thinking about other things when I sat in class. Was that laughter behind me about me? Was that girl who glanced over signaling to Katie's friends? Which route could I take after school to avoid running into them? At the end of 8th grade, my mother was diagnosed with breast cancer. My dad had healed enough to go back to construction, but the medical bills were a black hole. I quit the grocery store job and found one at a convenience store with longer hours, 5 p.m. to 1 a.m. I still had to be up by 6 for school. In 9th grade, I finished 3rd in the entire class, but the private school only gave scholarships to the top 2. You're ranked 3rd, the principal said over the phone. Unfortunately, funding is tight this year. You could apply for a student loan. We have partnerships with several banks. I don't need it. I hung up and applied to the nearest public high school. Westwood. No tuition, close to home, and I could save the bus fare for my mother's medicine. The night before school started, I sat on my bed folding my uniform. It was a discounted set, and the lace on the collar was coming loose in places. I spent an hour with a needle and thread, stitching it back together by lamplight. My mother leaned against the doorway, watching me. She'd gotten so thin. Ella! Yeah! I'm sorry, she said. I'm dragging you down. I finished a stitch and looked up, smiling. Come on, I'm just going to school. It's not like I'm going to war. I really believed that then. A public school. How much worse could it be than private school full of rich kids? I'd just keep to myself. Show up, go to class, go home. 3 years would fly by. I didn't know someone could find every crack in you and pry them open. I didn't know poor could be its own crime. I didn't know you could do nothing at all, just sit there, and people would still hate you for it. On my first day at Westwood, I walked into the auditorium in my restitched uniform. A blonde girl next to me turned and smiled. Hey, I'm Emily. You're new, right? I smiled back. Yeah, I'm Ella. The sun was streaming through the high windows. September. Still warm, but the air conditioning in the auditorium made everything feel cool and clean. Ella Mendez sat in that chair, listening to the principal's speech, thinking, new place, fresh start. She didn't know the girl smiling at her would become 3 years of her nightmares. She didn't know she'd hear the words, "Why isn't your mother dead yet?" 100 times. She didn't know one day she'd stand in the wings of the same auditorium, slip 3 years of evidence into an envelope. But that afternoon, she just sat there, sunshine warm on her shoulders. Everyone around her was clapping, and she clapped too. Her palms were empty. She thought life was giving her a second chance. On the second day of high school, Ella Mendez heard Emily's voice in the bathroom. Did you see her uniform? The lace is all frayed, and she thinks she looks good in it. Her friend Lisa laughed. She said her mom's a homemaker. I bet she just can't afford a job. Don't be mean, Emily said, but her voice was smiling. She might really be poor. I saw her lunch yesterday. Just a peanut butter sandwich. Not even milk. Oh my God. She's that broke and she came to our school. Exactly, Emily said as the tap ran. Some people just don't know where they belong. They squeeze in where they shouldn't, and everyone feels awkward. I stood inside the stall, gripping a wad of toilet paper, not moving. When they finally left, laughing, I pushed the door open and looked at myself in the mirror. Pale face, red-rimmed eyes. I splashed cold water on my cheeks and told myself I'd misheard. But at lunch that day, Emily's table was full. I stood there with my sandwich, and Emily looked up with exactly the right amount of regret. "Oh, sorry, Ella, we're full today. Maybe go sit over there." She pointed to a table in the corner next to the trash cans. I sat there. I ate my sandwich alone. After that, things snowballed. Trash started appearing in my desk, crumpled homework, sticky notes that said, "Poor girl, get out," and once a used tampon wrapped in plastic, sitting on top of my math textbook. I showed a teacher and he said, "Probably just a prank. Keep an eye on things." In gym class, Emily stood in the middle of the locker room and said loudly, "Does anybody else smell something weird in here lately?" Her friends all turned to look at me. From that day on, every time I walked into the changing room, someone pinched their nose. I showered every day. I wore clean clothes, but they said they could smell poor. There was no way to argue with it. And then the rumor started. It was a Wednesday in October. I had a bad cold and felt dizzy, so I was slow changing. Only 2 other girls were still in the locker room. They were late leaving, and I was late leaving, each of us in our own row. The next day, the whole grade was talking about it. Ella Mendez had been taking photos of people changing. I didn't know where it had come from. I walked down the hallway and watched classmates who'd never spoken to me suddenly veer around me. Guys whistled and said, "Watch out for her camera." A girl I didn't even recognize called me a pervert. I found Emily at her locker, fixing her makeup in the mirror. She saw me in the reflection and didn't turn around. "Was it you?" "What?" Her voice was light. "The locker room thing." She turned then, looked at me, tilted her head, an expression I'd see 100 times over the next 3 years. Mouth up, eyes down. Like she was looking at something very small and very low. "Ella," she said, "you were kind of suspicious that day, you know. Hanging around, staring at people while you were sick. You think people wouldn't notice. I wasn't staring at anyone. I had a cold, I was dizzy. It doesn't matter what I think." She shrugged. "That's what everyone's saying. What am I supposed to do? Maybe go explain it to everyone." I did. At lunch, I stood in the middle of the cafeteria, in front of all those tables and all those faces. I stammered through my explanation. I was just sick. I never took pictures of anyone, until Lisa cut me off. "Then let us check your phone." I had nothing to hide. I handed it over. My hands were shaking. They scrolled for 5 minutes. Photos, messages, browser history, everything. Finally, Lisa handed it back with a shrug. "No pictures." I exhaled. Then Emily's voice, soft but cutting through the whole cafeteria. Of course she deleted them. Who'd be stupid enough to leave evidence? Everyone, literally everyone, laughed. That sound hit me like a whip. I stood there, phone in my hand. Hundreds of people, and nobody said a word for me. I walked back to my seat. My sandwich was cold, the bread curling at the edges. I didn't eat lunch that day. I emailed my homeroom teacher, Mr. Harrison, and laid everything out. He said we'd talk the next day. He sat behind his desk, chair swiveling. "Mendez, I read what you sent, but I've asked around, and nobody admits to saying those things. Emily's upset. She says you're blaming her for something she didn't do." "I didn't. Let me finish." He raised a hand. "Have you considered that maybe you're being too sensitive? These are classmates joking around. Why take everything the worst way? Some teachers have mentioned you seem distracted, unfocused. Have you thought about talking to the school counselor? I looked at him. He pushed up his glasses, face mild but immovable. I didn't say another word. I just left. After school, I sat on the backfield for a long time. The sky was getting dark, the soccer pitch empty. I crouched in the grass, buried my face in my knees, and felt my eyes sting. But I didn't cry. My mother had told me once that crying doesn't fix anything, and besides, she'd notice if my eyes were puffy. I did the math in my head. 8 months left of freshman year. 2 more years after that. 7 hours a day, 5 days a week, 40 weeks a year. I counted and counted until I got to the total. 1,700 more hours. 1,700 hours. I took a deep breath, stood up, brushed the grass off my pants, and walked home. From that day on, I kept my head down. No eye contact. No lingering in hallways. First to class, last to leave. If anyone spoke to me, I just said, uh-huh, and didn't offer anything they could twist. It didn't help. Toward the end of freshman year, someone put a dead hamster in my locker. Brown and white fur, belly up, eyes half open, already stiff. A note beside it in red marker. When's your mom going to die? I called the police. They came, checked the cameras, but that row of lockers had been broken for 3 days. The maintenance log said vandalism, but nobody was caught. The principal called me in. Mendez, this is an awful situation. We want to help, but without proof there isn't much we can do. Have you thought about transferring? We can help with placement. What if it happens again somewhere else? He was quiet for a second. Well, we'd cross that bridge when we came to it. I walked out of his office and almost ran into Emily in the hallway. She was holding a stack of papers and smiled when she saw me. Got in trouble. I didn't answer. I sidestepped around her. Her voice followed me down the hall. I heard about your mom. That sucks. You could apply for financial aid. You know, why keep pretending? Your family's the type that's supposed to take handouts. Nothing embarrassing about it. I stopped, just for 1 second. Then I kept walking. That night, I found my dad in the kitchen smoking. He never smoked. The ashtray was packed with butts. He stubbed one out when he saw me, opened the window to air the room out. "How's Mom?" I asked. "Asleep," he said. She threw up again. "Didn't eat." He paused. His voice was rough. "About school, if it's really that bad, Dad can figure something out. We could move. Different neighborhood. I'll find another construction crew." "No," I said. "I'm okay." He sat at the table for a long time. I watched his back from the doorway, shoulders slumped. So many more gray hairs than I remembered. When I was little, he used to carry me on his shoulders to ball games. His shoulders could block out the whole sky. Now he looked like a lamp about to burn out. I went to my room and shut the door, dropped my bag on the floor, and slid down until my back hit the wood. A street lamp outside threw an orange rectangle across my bedspread. I stared at that patch of light. 1,700 hours, I told myself. It's fine. Just 1,700 hours. You can do this. At the end of that semester, I got AB in math. Not an A. AB. Mr. Harrison mentioned it in front of the whole class. Some people's performance is clearly slipping. This is an elementary school. Nobody's going to wait forever for you to get your act together. Everyone knew who he meant. A few people snickered. I folded my report card and tucked it into my bag. I kept that math test for 3 years, not because it was important, but because I needed the reminder. Every day you stay here, something gets taken from you. Grades, time, self-respect, sleep, your mother's smile, your father's hair turning white. It couldn't go on like this. At the start of sophomore year, I made a decision. I wouldn't hide anymore, but I wouldn't fight either. I'd watch. I watched when Emily went to the bathroom, who she talked to, what made her laugh. I watched Lisa's social media, who she followed, who unfollowed her, whose posts she liked. I watched the quiet kid who ran the auditorium sound system. What was his name? Jason Wilcox. He was nobody special, but he was always the last one out of the auditorium, sometimes just sitting at the soundboard staring into space. I noticed Emily had a habit. Every day after third period, she'd go to the same corner of the library for 20 minutes. The spot was tucked behind a bookshelf, mostly invisible from the rest of the room. She thought nobody could see her there, so she'd pull out her phone and scroll a private account. The avatar was a black cat, the username a string of random-looking letters. I didn't know what account it was, but I knew the expression on her face when she typed. Not her usual public smile. A real one. I started walking past her locker, not doing anything, just noticing. Once, she left her phone on the shelf inside, screen on, when she ran to the bathroom. I caught a glimpse of the login screen. The username was fakecat_0923. I didn't know the password, but I held on to that. My grades started creeping back up that semester. Not because I could suddenly concentrate, but because I'd found a way to stay awake. I turned all my attention into collecting. Every insult, I memorized where and when. Every shove, I noted whose hand. Every mean note, I folded into a tin box, wrote the date on the back. My box filled up. Notes, reminders, a messy map of social connections, who was close to whom, who might know things, who was just a hanger-on. Jason was on the edge of the circle in my map. He did tech work. Emily only talked to him when she needed a mic or a projector. He ate lunch alone most days. I noticed a band sticker on his phone case, a small indie group I'd heard one song from. I decided to take a gamble. One winter lunch period, I sat down across from him with my sandwich. He glanced up, mildly surprised. "This seat taken?" I asked. "No." He went back to his food. I ate in silence for a few bites, then said, "That band on your phone case, the Crashing Waves, right?" He blinked. "You know them." "I've heard Midnight Drive," I said. "The drumline's good." His face lit up in that particular way I'd come to recognize, the look of someone who just found out someone else saw the same thing they saw. We talked for about 10 minutes. Mostly him talking, me listening, from their first album to the lead singer's solo project. I didn't pretend to know stuff I didn't. I just nodded and asked questions. At the end, he said, "I didn't know you were into this stuff." "Nobody ever asked," I said. He looked at me for a second, then nodded. After that, we'd exchange small acknowledgments in the hall. Nothing big, but I'd gained something tiny. Someone saw me. Not the joke. Just Ella. Second semester of sophomore year, my mother had major surgery. We burned through whatever savings we had left. My father applied for a hospital assistance program. I later learned Emily's father sat on the board that approved those applications. Denied. Incomplete paperwork. He reapplied. Denied again. Household income doesn't qualify. That month, my father lost 8 pounds. He'd leave at 3 a.m. and come back at 10 p.m., working 2 jobs, plus an overnight convenience store shift. My little sister was 7. One night she woke up alone and sat crying in the living room. I held her for half an hour before she asked, "Ella, did Daddy leave us?" I said no. He was working to help Mom get better. "Then why don't we ever have enough money?" I had no answer for that. One night that March, I was walking home late from the library. A few streetlights were out on the path behind school, and the dark felt thick. Footsteps behind me. I walked faster. The footsteps sped up too. I ran. I didn't stop until I turned the corner. Nobody there. But my heart was slamming against my ribs. After that, my dad started picking me up after work every night on his beat-up bicycle, waiting at the back gate no matter the weather. One evening he was late. I stood waiting for maybe 10 minutes. Emily drove by in her white used BMW. Her father had bought it for her. To practice with, she told everyone. She slowed down when she passed me, rolled the window down. Lisa was in the passenger seat. Waiting for someone, Emily asked. I didn't answer. Oh. She glanced down the street. You're a construction worker, Dad? Right. Guess you guys can't even afford a car. Lisa laughed. That sharp, ugly sound. Hope he shows up. Emily hit the gas and peeled off, exhaust hitting my face. I stood there in the cold, looked down at my shoes, soles almost smooth, a crack across the right one I'd patched with super glue 3 times. My father arrived a few minutes later, out of breath. Sorry, the site ran late. I said it was fine and climbed onto the back of the bike. He pedaled slow, and the wind off his back carried the smell of sweat and cement dust. I pressed my face into his shirt, rough fabric, but warm. That night in bed, one thought kept circling. Why could she look down on us so easily? How could her father reject a sick family's application and buy her a BMW with the same hand? What had I done wrong? No answer. But lying there, I felt my fingers tighten on the sheets. 3 years. I kept my head down. I'd taken it. I told myself I just had to survive. But that night, a voice in my head, soft, clear, undeniable. Enough. The summer after sophomore year, I didn't waste a single day. I found a part-time job at the city library, shelving books, scanning barcodes, occasionally hauling boxes in the basement storage room. The pay was minimal, but they let me use library computers during downtime. And the best part, total silence. Nobody knew me. Nobody covered their mouth when I walked past. The basement was 2 floors underground, freezing cold even in July. Most of the stock down there was donated old books, paper yellowed and brittle, smelling like damp pulp. That's where I met Frank. Retired engineer, mid-60s, bald, reading glasses on a chain. He came to the library 3 times a week, not to borrow books, but to use the ancient public computers. His home machine had died, and he didn't want to buy a new one. Too much to learn, he'd say. First time I saw him, he was crouched in the corner of a storage room, sighing over a junked computer. The library was about to toss it. Hard drive removed, stripped down to an empty shell. What are you trying to do? I asked. He looked up, wondering if I can Frankenstein this thing into a file server. Such a waste to throw it out. I helped him haul it to his usual table. He kept coming back with screwdrivers and tool kits, tinkering. When I wasn't busy, I'd sit nearby and we'd chat. One afternoon, he brought coffee and sat across from me in the reading room. Studied my face for a minute. You've got a lot on your mind, kid. I smiled but didn't say anything. I did data recovery for 30 years, he said, tapping his mug. Retired tech director. Old as I am, I can still pull back 90% of what you delete off a hard drive. I didn't know why he was telling me this, but my heart caught. Anything? I asked. Depends. Physical damage is a no-go, but normal deletion, as long as the data hasn't been overwritten more than 3 times, yeah. He sipped his coffee. Why? You delete something important. I hesitated. Then, what about cloud backups? Not a hard drive. The autosave kind. He set his mug down. Look serious now. Tell me what platform. That afternoon, I followed him to his small apartment. It was crammed with wires, old circuit boards, and stacks of electronics, but he had a solid desktop setup. He taught me basic recovery tools, how to dig browser caches, how to use public APIs to brute force weak passwords. I'm not telling you to do anything illegal, he said. But most people's digital lives are full of holes. They leave traces everywhere and think they're invisible. I didn't tell him who I was looking for. He didn't ask. He just taught. By the end of the summer, I knew maybe 7 or 8 different data gathering methods. Most were legal, connecting public information, tracking social media timelines, mining metadata from deleted files. A few sat in gray territory. Frank lowered his voice for those. Do this once or twice and you're probably fine. Use it too much and they'll find you. I said I understood. By the time school started, I'd collected a ton of public information about Westwood Student Council, meeting minutes, financial reports, voting records. Emily was vice president that year, and her signature and notes were all over the official documents. But one thing was missing. Her own words. The ones about cheating. The ones she couldn't deny. On our last afternoon together, Frank said, "Kid, the best evidence usually isn't something someone gave you. It's something you left behind." I didn't understand then. The first week of senior year, I put something new in my pocket. A small black voice recorder clipped inside my collar, nearly invisible. First recording, 3rd day of school. I was walking down the hall, and Emily's group came the other way. They didn't move, so I squeezed past against the wall. As I passed, I heard, "That broke loser still hasn't transferred." Unbelievable. The recorder blinked. Saved. Second recording. Homeroom the second week. Mr. Harrison was lecturing about senior responsibility, saying certain students need to recognize their place and stop dragging the class down. His eyes flicked toward me. Emily spoke up. "Mr. Harrison, Ella's been missing group activities lately. Is everything okay at home?" She sounded so sincere. A few kids turned to look at me with soft expressions. *C, she's being nice. Only I could hear what was underneath. When I listened back later, I noticed her voice lifted at the end of "at home." Not a question, a statement. She was saying, "We know everything. Stop pretending." 3rd recording. 4th. 5th. I had more and more, but I knew one thing clearly. This wouldn't be enough. Best case, Emily would get called in for a talk. One call from her father and it'd disappear. I needed something bigger. Something she'd said that she couldn't take back. One Friday in October, I camped out in the library. Emily came as usual after 3rd period, settled into her corner, scrolled for 10 or 15 minutes. That black cat account, I'd confirmed it was hers. Her public social media was all smiling photos and motivational quotes. The private one was a sewer of nastiness. I spent a week across the stacks, tracking her habits. When she logged in, how she handled her phone after. She almost always locked it before leaving, but twice, in a hurry, she just let the screen time out rather than fully locking. I waited for an opening. Last Thursday of October, there was a student council emergency meeting that afternoon, and Emily bolted from the library, shoving her phone into an unzipped bag. I walked past and saw the screen still glowing. The black cat interface was still up. She'd logged out, but her browser history was visible. I didn't touch her phone. I didn't touch anything. I just stood close enough to read the username, fakecat_0923, and then looked at the other thing she'd left on the chair, a school-issued tablet, supposedly for council use, though everyone knew it was basically hers. Tablet wasn't locked. Face up. I checked the hallway. Empty. I moved fast. Snapped a photo of the Wi-Fi settings page, network name, router MAC address. Then scrolled through the browser history for the past week. One link jumped out, the internal school server page for the student council voting system. My heart pounded. I didn't dig deeper, just memorized the URL, closed everything, set the tablet back exactly where I found it, and left. That afternoon, I went down to the library basement and used Frank's methods to access the internal page through the school's public Wi-Fi. I expected a password screen. But when it loaded, I almost yelled out loud. No barrier. The page was set to viewable from any on-campus device. Anyone connected to school Wi-Fi could see it. It was a clunky, ugly little page. Tables, numbers, a few lines of code. I pulled up last year's election results. Total votes, candidate tallies, timestamps. Emily's numbers had jumped absurdly on the last day, a spike bigger than all previous totals combined. That wasn't organic turnout. That was data being pumped in. I took screenshots. More than screenshots. I exported the timestamps minute by minute and made a trend graph. A sharp, ugly peak that lasted about 40 minutes, then dropped back to normal. 200 extra votes in 40 minutes. The entire school had 900 eligible voters. I stored everything in an encrypted file. Then I did one more thing. I used a public terminal to post an anonymous question on the school forum. Has anyone else thought last year's election results were kind of weird? Deleted in 5 minutes. By the admin account. I copied down the admin username. Student Council Tech Department shared account. But the login logs showed that only one person had used it the afternoon the post was deleted. Jason Wilcox. I stared at that name. Was he one of Emily's people? Or just a tool? I waited 2 weeks before contacting him. In those 2 weeks, I got more material. The best one came mid-November. Emily and Lisa at a cafe talking. I sat in the booth behind them, recorder on the table. Emily was discussing graduation speech prep. I've already written it. It's just a formality. I'll get teary, the teachers will swoon. Mom calls the principal. Scholarship locked in. Lisa, what about Ella? If she shows up. Her. Emily laughed. She makes a scene. Everyone gets another laugh. Some people are born to be jokes. That's just how it works. I finished my sandwich slowly. Peanut butter and jelly. Too much jelly today, cloying sweet. The recorder kept spinning. December hit hard. My mother was back in the hospital. Worse this time. Surgery again. More money. The assistance program came back denied, this time with doesn't meet priority criteria. I was in the hospital hallway when I saw Emily's father pass by. Mr. Foster, white coat, laughing with a group of doctors. He glanced at me briefly, maybe registered my face, then looked away. He'd recognized me. He said nothing. My mother was on the 3rd floor, right in his building, and he walked those halls every day. He'd never said a word. Later that week, I sat in review class. The heat was cranked, but my fingers were ice. Recorder in my desk hole running. Emily came to my desk. Everyone was watching. Ella, she said, my mom told me yours is back in the hospital. If you need anything. No, I said. Thanks. She leaned in, voice just for me. You know who reviews those assistance applications, right? If you asked me nice, maybe I'd put in a word. I looked at her eyes, blue like glass marbles. Inside them wasn't malice exactly. It was something worse. Certainty. The absolute conviction that she could do anything to me, that I'd never fight back, that my life was dough in her hands. I said nothing. She straightened up. Ella says she doesn't need help. Let's not worry, guys. Smiling, she walked away. That night in my room, I laid everything out. The tin box, the audio files, the screenshots, the vote graph. I lined them up like playing cards. The shape they made, Emily's father abusing his position, Emily herself rigging an election, her friends active participants in the bullying, the school administration willfully blind, the forum deletion traceable to Jason. Jason, I thought for a long time. Then I sent him a message through the internal system. One line. Did you know about the election voting problem last year? I dropped the phone face down and took a shower. When I came back, there was a reply. How do you know about that? I didn't answer until the next morning. At lunch, I carried my sandwich to Jason's usual table. He looked up, face complicated. I sat down. Did you help Emily change voting data? He was quiet. I didn't know what it was. I got told to maintain system stability. I saw weird numbers, asked the council president. He said, probably system lag, ignore it. So I did. What about deleting the forum post? Another pause. Someone used the tech account to delete it. Not me. I don't have forum permissions. 3 people know that password. I'm one. The other 2. He looked at me. You're investigating her? I'm getting myself some justice. Jason put a sandwich down and rubbed his face. Ella, you know who her father is. You can't beat them. Even if I help. My dad works at a bank. 1 call from her mother. I don't need you on the front line. I pulled out my phone and showed him the vote graph. I need this. Who else can access the raw backend logs besides you? He stared at the graph. Finally, the council president. But he won't give it to you. What's Emily holding over him? Jason blinked. How'd you know she's holding something? Because a normal person finding election fraud wouldn't just say ignore it. Not unless they're compromised too. He leaned back and exhaled. He did expense fraud last year. Bought a laptop with council funds. Filed it as activity equipment. Emily helped him cook the books. He can't investigate without incriminating himself. I smiled. Not a happy smile. The smile of someone who's been walking in the dark and finally sees the edges of the path. Get me the purchase records, I said. That's all I need. Jason watched me. What are you going to do? I'm going to make her stand on that stage at graduation and confess everything she's done. She won't confess. She already did, I said. She just didn't know I was listening. I played him the cafe clip. Emily's voice. She makes a scene. Everyone gets another laugh. Jason's face went pale. How long have you been recording? 3 hours total. I pocketed the phone. Plus screenshots of her private account, election data, her dad's files. Everything. I'm not using any of it yet. Then when? Graduation day. I looked at him. When she's at the highest point. When she thinks she's won. Then I make sure everyone hears it. Jason started helping after that. Not much, but critical. He got me copies of the expense records with Emily's signature. He confirmed where the back-end logs were stored. The school kept all historical data, just never looked at it. I spent winter break weaving everything together. Timeline, causation, location. Every rumor Emily had spread matched to recordings. Every hateful note matched to her good person public posts. And a list of people she'd hurt, threatened, silenced. I tracked them down one by one. Remember when Emily said you plagiarized her homework? Remember when she said you stole class funds? Remember when your campaign posters got torn down and she told everyone you'd staged it? Every person I found went through the same cycle. Silence, then anger, then fear. Asterisk, I know she did it. But what can I do? Asterisk. Nothing, I said. Just stay in your seat on graduation day. Whatever you hear, stay. Listen. Some nodded. Some said nothing. It didn't matter. I was speaking to the room, not just to them. Winter faded. Spring came. Second semester of senior year flew by. Exams, applications, recommendations, yearbook photos. Emily got into several universities. The big one was an Ivy out east. She posted the acceptance letter on social media with the caption, "All the hard work paid off." I screenshot it. In the folder, next to the manipulated election chart. But I held off. I needed a rhythm. Mid-February, the frost still on the ground, I made a choice. I'd start with one thin thread, the fake expense claim. Jason had gotten me the original receipts. Cultural festival sound equipment rental, $2,300. I called the rental company, and they said the actual equipment was a high-end laptop, returned 3 days later. Emily had coincidentally posted a photo around that time, a new silver laptop in the background, clearly not the school-issue device. I compiled a short timeline doc, invoice, purchase date, Emily's photo, rental company audio. Then I did something that would have made Jason's jaw drop. I sent the doc anonymously to the student council president, Derek Harris. Derek was a senior, football player, and Emily's lapdog. But I knew his soft spot. He was applying to colleges, and his recommendation letters all mentioned integrity and trustworthiness. Anonymous email, 1 line, 3 days. You take this to the administration yourself, or it goes to every admissions office on your list. Derek cracked within 24 hours. He went to the principal and confessed to the expense fraud, spilling Emily's name in the process. She told me to do it. She said nobody would check. Emily was waiting in the office next door when he walked out crying. She didn't know what he'd said, but she guessed. That night, an unknown number texted me, "Was this you?" I didn't reply. I saved the number in my notes. Target 1 activated. 3 days later, the board sent out an internal notice. Student Council Finance audit revealed irregularities. Responsible parties disciplined. Funds recovered. Formal reprimand. No names, but the whole school was guessing. Emily's social media went silent that week. Her friends tiptoed around her like she was a bomb about to go off. Lisa whispered at lunch, "Are you okay?" Emily jammed her fork into her salad, hard enough to scrape the plate. "Fine." Her voice was flat. "Someone's trying to ruin me. I find out who, I'll destroy them." I sat at the farthest diagonal table, head down over my peanut butter sandwich. Same old recipe. But I let myself smile. Just a little. Just for me. Step 1. Her student council queen crown was cracked. Everyone knew she'd had issues. Details fuzzy, but crack was crack. March. Step 2. I found posts on Emily's private account about her recommendation letters. One read, "Mom had her college friend write my rec and I tweaked it. They don't verify anything anyway." I screenshot that. Then I matched it against the actual recommendation. Emily had posted a summary on her public page. The bullet points about leadership and organization aligned exactly with her trash talk. I didn't send this to the university. I sent it to Emily's independent college counselor, someone not employed by the school, no institutional loyalty. Temporary email. Subject line, "Might want to double-check Ms. Foster's recommendation letters." 3 days later, Emily's Ivy acceptance got put on hold. The admissions office sent a formal note. Additional verification required on certain materials. Please await further updates. Emily cried in class that day. First time in 3 years she'd been the one losing control in front of everyone. Nobody knew how to handle it. Lisa tried, but I noticed her hand on Emily's shoulder was tentative. She was calculating. Lisa's parents ran a small building supply company that leaned heavily on Mr. Foster's connections. If Emily's ship was going down, Lisa would be the first one overboard. That weekend, I went to the cafe where Lisa worked. Her family wasn't rich enough to skip jobs, but she'd always dressed it up as experience. I sat at the counter. When she brought my coffee, I looked up. "Your dad's company. That contract they have with Mr. Foster. What happens if he loses his hospital board seat?" Lisa's hand wobbled. Coffee sloshed onto the tray. "What are you talking about?" "Just thinking out loud." I wiped the counter with a napkin. "Never mind. You're busy." I walked out. Behind me, a cup clattered on its saucer. Lisa's hands were shaking. 3 days later, Emily's inner circle started crumbling. First, Lisa was conveniently too busy to have lunch with Emily for a week straight. Then another friend, Lucy, publicly denied knowing anything about any election stuff. Emily cornered Lisa in the bathroom. They fought loud enough for the adjacent hallway to hear. I was in the adjacent stall, recorder running. "You turn on me? Want your dad's business to fall apart? Emily, my dad runs a real company. If your father goes down, we'll still survive. You. And you know what you did. You think I don't remember the election? What you asked me to help with? Shut up." I tapped the recorder and saved the file. I wouldn't need that one on graduation day, but it made for good insurance. Cracks like these didn't mend. Mid-March, Step 3. I filed a complaint with the school board against Mr. Harrison, not anonymous, but under a fake name registered to a burner email. It included recordings of his office conversations with me. "You might be too sensitive. Maybe try counseling." And a clip from the time I was shoved in the hallway and he walked right past. One sentence in the complaint. This teacher ignored ongoing systematic bullying and gaslit the victim into questioning her own mental health. The board brought him in 3 days later. He came out gray-faced, nearly walked into a door. According to Jason's tech friend, he was told to resign voluntarily to preserve his professional record. By the end of March, the atmosphere at Westwood had shifted. People who'd crossed the hall to avoid me would now give me tiny nods. Someone said, "Hey," once. In the cafeteria, tables didn't collectively turn away when I walked past. Not friendship, just awareness. A new consensus. This invisible person had weight. I took it in stride. Nodded back, no more than that. The people who'd been silent for 3 years were circling back now, but I didn't forget how they'd looked the other way. Forgiveness could wait. Right now I had one target. April brought the real face-off. Mr. Foster came to school. Gray suit, perfect hair, standing outside the principal's office like a thundercloud. Students edged around him in a wide arc. I was coming out of the library when I saw him in the hallway. We were maybe 40 feet apart. He stopped. "Doors, girl." Not a question. I didn't move. He walked closer. "I've heard about you. Let me be clear. Stirring things up won't just hurt you. Your mother, your father, your little sister. You sure you want that kind of fire?" My fingers tightened on my backpack strap. My voice was steady. "Mr. Foster, I'm just a student. I haven't done anything." He smiled. That smile, identical to Emily's. Mouth up, eyes down. "You know what I'm talking about. My advice, back off. There's a lesson every kid learns eventually. Some fights you can't win." He walked past. Shoes clicking on tile. Fading. I stood there, back flat against the wall. At the far end of the hall, a couple of kids peeked around the corner. They ducked back when they saw me look. I breathed in, breathed out, slow. That night, I pulled up the State Health Department file on my computer. Mr. Foster's approval logs, denial reasons, timelines, my mother's wait times. I organized everything and made a backup with Frank. I called him. "If someone comes asking, I've got it." His voice was solid. "I'm old, but I know where to hide a hard drive." "Thank you, kid." He paused. "You sure you want to go all the way?" "I don't have a way back." "Then go all the way." He said it plainly. "Make it good." Second week of April, Emily's reputation at school disintegrated. Not from one big thing, from the accumulation of small cuts. 2 council members demanded a fresh audit of last year's election after they saw my anonymous post on the forum. Just a chart with a spiked curve, no explanation, caption reading "Judge for yourself." It lasted 2 hours before deletion, but screenshots had spread everywhere. Then Lisa turned public. "The vote seemed weird that year," she announced in a group discussion. I felt it too. I just didn't say. I admit I was weak. It was a clean pivot, co-conspirator transformed into silent victim. I watched from across the room. Didn't call her out. Lisa wasn't worth the ammo. Then someone unearthed Emily's private Black Cat account. How, I wasn't sure. Maybe someone had glimpsed her unlocked screen. Maybe another way. But screenshots spread across the grade like wildfire. Everyone whose name she trashed in those posts started matching names to insults. Some cried, some laughed, but the way they looked at Emily had changed forever. She used to walk the halls like a queen. Now she moved like she was walking on glass. Someone taped a note to her locker, a line straight from her private posts. "You look like a sack of potatoes in that dress." Below it, someone else added, "Who put that up? Damn, that's savage." I watched from outside the crowd. My tin box wasn't getting new entries anymore. The venom was flowing toward Emily now. Nobody remembered Ella Mendez anymore. I wasn't accepted anywhere. Nobody apologized. But silence was also a position. 3 years, and finally, they'd stopped watching the show. 3rd week of April, Emily's Ivy acceptance got formally rescinded. Her mother came to school that day. Designer trench coat, heels, walking into the principal's office with controlled fury. When she came out, her face was a mask. She saw me in the hallway and stopped. The lines around her mouth were tight, like she was biting down on something. "You think you've won?" Voice low. I looked at her. She was well preserved, but there were grooves around her eyes, parentheses around her mouth. "I'm not trying to win anything," I said. "I'm just telling the truth about what happened. The truth." Mrs. Foster laughed, that same family smile. "You have no idea. Do you know how hard Emily worked? How many drafts she wrote? How late she stayed up? I know she asked me when my mother was dying, 'Why isn't she dead yet?' I said, 'Did she write about that in her essays?'" Mrs. Foster went white. I walked past. The heels didn't follow. After school that day, I stood by the gate waiting for my father. Emily walked over from the parking lot. Alone. She stopped 3 feet away. The wind caught her hair messy. She didn't fix it. "It's you," she said. "Yep." "When did you start?" 3 years ago." 3 years. Her brow furrowed. "You started 3 years ago." 3 years ago. The first time you lied about me in the locker room," I said. "I didn't do anything." But I remembered. Emily opened her mouth. An apology, anger, begging, all of it trying to escape. Nothing came out. She turned and walked away. Her posture was different now. Shoulders slumped, heels dragging. I watched her get smaller against the parking lot and felt, not satisfaction, not pity, just stillness, like a lake after the waves had passed. Dad's car pulled up. I got in and didn't close the window all the way. "How was today?" he asked. "Okay." He drove. Emily was still in the rearview mirror, a shrinking figure beside a white car, long shadow stretching in the low sun. I looked away, the April wind on my face, cool, not cold. May. 2 weeks until graduation. My mother was discharged. The assistance program was approved. Not because Mr. Foster suddenly found a conscience, but because the state health department had received an anonymous complaint. No names mentioned, just a careful timeline of inconsistent denials. It was approved within a week. Mr. Foster must have panicked, cleaned it up fast. My mother came home thinner than before, but her eyes had life. She watched me pack things from my room. "Graduation Saturday? Next Saturday. What are you wearing?" "Let me iron it." "Uniform's fine." She looked at me a moment, nodded. 3 days before graduation, I found Jason. He ran the auditorium sound. "The main mic runs through the hall speakers, right?" "Right." "Can you patch the backstage mics into the same feed?" He looked at me. "What are you planning to put back there?" I want to put something in someone's memory book, and I want it to play itself. Long silence. You're serious? Yes. 8,000 people in that hall. I know. And afterward, her father. Her father's already covered, I said. Ethics board, plus the health department. He's got bigger problems than me. Jason looked at me differently. Maybe respect, maybe recognition. Like he finally understood that someone who'd been stepped on for 3 years could be the steadiest person in the room. All right, he said. I'll handle the audio. Thank you. Don't thank me. He paused. Ella, I saw a lot of those things. Never did anything. I regret it. Then do better next time, I said. Graduation morning. I was up early. Sky still gray at the curtains. I put on my uniform and restitched a loose spot on the collar. Then I copied everything from my encrypted drive onto a tiny flash drive and loaded a subset, recordings, screenshots, data logs, onto a small black recorder. 20 hours of battery. I slipped it into a plain envelope. Dad was in the living room in his one iron shirt, collar a bit yellowed. He saw me come down the stairs and opened his mouth like he wanted to say something. Finally, go. I hugged him. He stiffened. We hadn't done that in a while. Tonight we'll see Mom, I said. Good. I stepped outside. The day was beautiful, sunlight filtering through new leaves, dappling the pavement. Students in caps and gowns walked toward school laughing. I followed them, one of them separate. At the gate I paused. I'd walked through this gate 3 years. My first day I thought it looked big and promising. Now it was just painted iron, chipping at the edges, weeds poking through the gravel. Inside, the auditorium was already half full. I found a seat in the back. A kid next to me glanced over, said nothing. A few rows up, people were taking selfies, crying, laughing. Perfume, hairspray, that electric graduation mix of release and grief. Speeches, principal, vice principal, parent representative. I sat with my hands on my knees, slight dampness on my palms. Then, valedictorian address. Emily walked out from backstage. White dress with small gold embroidery, hair loose and glowing under the lights. She adjusted the mic, smiled at the crowd. Applause. Her mother front row, eyes shining. Hello, everyone. Emily's voice through the speakers, steady and sweet. 4 years, and I'm standing here, and the first thing I want to say is thank you. Thank you to our teachers, our families, our friends. I stood up. Beside me, someone looked. I walked down the side aisle, past the rows, through the side door into the wings. Backstage was dark. Jason nodded from the soundboard. I stood behind the main curtain and watched Emily's back, her voice rolling through the hall. Every student, every voice, I've always tried to listen. I pulled the envelope. The recorder was inside. I waited. Finally, I want to tell every graduate, wherever you go, remember you are loved, you are worthy. She paused for 1 second. Her eyes swept the audience, found my empty seat. The corner of her mouth lifted just slightly. I pressed play on my phone. 50-meter range. More than enough. The envelope was in the memory book on the backstage table, the council's gift to the valedictorian. I tucked it into the book's inner pocket that morning while setting up. The recorder activated. First sound bled from backstage through Jason's console into the main speakers. 1,000 people heard it at once. Emily's voice, not the sweet version, but sharp-edged mocking. Ella, you really think anyone believes you? Your mom's practically dead, and you're still coming to school. On stage, Emily froze. Her face went white, then red. The crowd went silent. Then heads started turning. Second clip. That broke loser still hasn't transferred. Third. She's the type who'll believe anything. Fourth. I found the system bug last year. Changed hundreds of votes during elections. Nobody checks. 5th, 6th, 7th. Emily stood at the podium, mouth open, mic still live. She reached to turn it off, but Jason had cut her control. She could fiddle with her own feed, but the main system was already carrying the backstage audio. Her face drained. Her mother shot up from the front row, screaming, "Turn it off! Turn it off!" Nobody moved. The principal was a stone statue. Behind the curtain, I watched Emily turn toward the wings. Her eyes searched the dark, found me. Her lips moved, probably saying you. I looked back at her. The girl who'd been laughed at in the cafeteria 3 years ago, standing in the shadows now, phone in steady hand, breathing slow. The recorder kept going. 12th clip, the cafe conversation, her laugh. She makes a scene. Everyone gets another laugh. Then something new. Not audio. I'd used voice synthesis to convert all her private account posts into spoken words, reading them aloud one by one, calling classmates ugly and stupid, mocking teachers for midlife crises, dismissing her parents as useless except for money, admitting her recommendation letter had been partly ghostwritten. The auditorium erupted. People stood, screaming, "Is this real?" Kids crying, the ones she'd mocked, red-faced and staring. Teachers going pale, she named names. A guy in the back bellowed, "Emily Foster, you owe me that election." Chaos. Board members rushing from side entrances, but the backstage door was blocked by Jason and a few others. Parents recording. Phones held high. Emily did one last stupid thing. She grabbed the mic, still connected to the main speakers, and screamed at the crowd, "It's fake. She made it up. Who are you going to believe, her or me?" The hall went silent for 1 second. Then the recorder played one final track. Not her voice. Mine. Pre-recorded, quiet and flat. "Emily, I kept every word you said for 3 years. I'm giving them back to you now." The auditorium boiled over. 1,000 heads turning toward the wings, but they couldn't see me, just a vague outline behind the curtain. Emily's mother rushed the stage. Her daughter had crumpled, white dress pooling on the floor. Mrs. Foster tried to lift her, but Emily was shaking so hard she couldn't stand. Side doors burst open. Crying, screaming, phones, flashbulbs. The principal's face was a blotchy mess of red and white. The academic dean was on his phone, talking at bullet speed. I turned. Jason gave me a thumbs up from the soundboard. I walked out the backstage door, pushed it open, and the sunlight hit me full force, blinding. The hallway was long and empty. My footsteps echoed off the tile. Around the corner, the front gate, the street with its row of sycamores. My phone buzzed. "Jason," she passed out. Her mom slapped the principal. "It's insane. Also, the election thing. Someone already contacted media." I locked the screen, kept walking. Through the gate, the wind hit. Young sycamore leaves, bright green, glassy in the sun. Traffic was light. A squirrel poked its head from behind a trunk, blinked, vanished. My dad's car was across the street. Same old car, rust stripe on the door. He stood beside it in his yellowed shirt, hair messed by the wind. He didn't ask anything when he saw me, just opened the passenger door. I walked over, got in, buckled up, old song on the radio. Dad glanced in the rear view at the auditorium, distant noise like it was underwater. He didn't speak, just pulled out. The school shrank in the side mirror, dome roof shrinking to a dot among trees. I leaned back, rolled my window down a crack. Cool air rushed in. "Let's get my sister," I said. "Then see Mom." "All right." He turned the corner. The sun rose fully, washing the whole sky white gold. I wiped my eyes with my sleeve. Dad didn't see. Or maybe he pretended not to. The song ended, a new one started. Upbeat, no idea what it was. I hummed along off-key, but Dad laughed. His laugh was quiet, real. I watched the street, the trees, the houses, the signs I'd passed every day for 3 years. Today everything looked different. Brighter. Clearer. Even that dented trash can with a lopsided heart spray-painted on its side looked okay. I didn't know what would happen next. Emily's retaliation. Mr. Foster's counterpunch. The school's fallout. But one thing I knew. I'd never walk with my head down again. The day after graduation, I slept until noon. I hadn't known I was capable of that. 3 years, my body had woken at 5 a.m. like a spring-loaded trap. But that morning, I blinked awake to white sunlight through the curtains, a phone full of notifications I ignored and rolled over. My mother came in with a glass of milk. Still weak, moving slow, but there was color in her face now. "Dad said you got back late," she said, setting it on the nightstand. "Drink." I sat up and took the glass. The milk was warm, the glass marked with her fingertips. I sipped it and came up with a white mustache. She sat on the edge of the bed and didn't say anything, just reached out and ran her hand over my hair from crown to ends, slow and steady. I buried my face in the glass. Later, I finally checked my phone. Jason had sent maybe 20 messages, most of them variations of "you're everywhere." Local news site headline: Westwood High graduation erupts as secret recordings expose election fraud. The comment section was a war zone. People angry at Emily. People angry at the school. People asking who the girl in the recording was. Jason said Mr. Foster's hospital had issued an internal notice. Executive leadership under review. I texted back. "Tell Frank I said thanks about the hard drive." Jason replied instantly. "Frank said you don't need to thank him. He said it's the first time he felt like his old skills were worth something." Lisa sent a long message. "I truly regret everything, and I hope you can find it in your heart to accept my apology." I read it, didn't answer, tucked it into my mental file. Maybe. Emily's social accounts vanished. All traces gone, including the black cat. Monday, I went back to school to pick up my diploma. The atmosphere was something else. People watched me through the gate, not the old voyeuristic stares, but something complicated. A younger girl ran up holding a marker. "Are you Ella? Can I have your autograph?" I blinked. Just on my textbook." She was blushing. I heard what happened. "You're incredible." I looked at her, smiled, took the marker and wrote 2 words inside the cover. "Keep going." She hugged the book and ran. Turned back once. "I got bullied too. I was too scared." I nodded at her. The diploma pickup line stretched long. I stood in it, people keeping a respectful distance. A guy ahead of me turned, worked his jaw, finally said, "Ella, that group project freshman year, I didn't pick you because Emily told me not to." I wasn't being fair. "Okay," I said. "I know that now." His face flushed and he turned away. When my turn came, the registrar handed over my diploma. A middle-aged man who'd never made eye contact with me before. Today he looked at me for a full 5 seconds, adjusted his glasses. "Mendez," he said, "the school will issue a public statement apologizing for the past 3 years. If you'd like to provide input." "I want the statement to be real," I said, taking the diploma and meeting his eyes. "No platitudes. What happened? Whose fault? How it's fixed?" He opened his mouth, then nodded. Walking out the gate, I turned to look back. Same gate, same chipped paint, same weeds in the gravel. But the person standing in front of it was different. The diploma was light in my hand, but it had weight. Dad was across the street in the washed car, the rust stripe still there, but the windshield was clean, bouncing sunlight. I walked over, got in. My sister was in the back, launched herself at me. Sister, Mom said you were on TV. Not TV. Just online. Still cool. Eyes huge. Cheeks smeared with melted ice cream. I wiped her face with my sleeve. Dad started the engine, changed the radio station, music flowing. We passed the cafe Emily used to go to. I looked out the window. A girl sat at an outdoor table, head down, hat pulled low, untouched coffee in front of her. Blonde hair, skinny, slumped shoulders. I looked away. The car kept moving. Sunlight through the windows made trees fully leafed, green and vibrant. Whined through the cracked window, that fresh-cut grass smell. What does Mom want for dinner? Dad asked. She said the chicken soup place. I'll take the detour. The car turned. The cafe shrank to a white in the mirror, then vanished. I leaned back. My sister slumped against me, already half asleep. My phone buzzed. Jason. Heard Mr. Foster was officially suspended this morning. I read it, locked the screen. Some things were over. Some were just starting. My own acceptance letter had arrived 2 days ago, full scholarship to a state university. Journalism. I'd written my application essay about Katie Morrison from 8th grade, about Westwood, about the tin box and the voice recorder. The admissions office had written back, "We believe your voice deserves to be heard." I kept that letter under the glass top of my desk, next to the diploma. In the living room, my mother hummed, off-key but happy. Dad's knife on the cutting board, rhythmic. My sister shifted in her sleep, dreaming, lips curved. I stood at the window. A neighbor's dog chased a butterfly across the lawn, clumsy, hopeful. A kid on a bike zoomed past with flowers in the basket. Somebody's birthday, maybe. No parades, no applause, but the world felt like someone had turned up the brightness. Colors truer, sounds cleaner, the air lighter by half a pound. I pushed the window open. May afternoon breeze, not too warm, not too cool. I breathed in, deep, full. First time in 3 years. 1 year later, Ella Mendez sat by the window in the university library, a journalism law textbook open in front of her, halfway through. Fall leaves covered the campus outside. Someone swept the path, the scrape of bristles drifting through the glass. The library was silent except for page turns and the quiet hum of a copier. Her phone buzzed. Jason had sent a photo. A fast food counter. A girl in uniform, cap pulled low, but blonde hair escaping beneath. She was bent over, handing a tray to a customer, movements clumsy. Behind her, the employee's schedule read Emily F. Jason's text caught her at a highway rest stop. She's been bouncing through jobs. Her dad's thing wrecked their name around here. Ella studied the photo. Emily was gaunt, cheekbones sharp, face bare. Her hair was pulled back, but stray strands escaped. She didn't look up as the customer took the tray. Ella zoomed in. A small stain on Emily's uniform sleeve, ketchup maybe. She used to obsess over little stains like that. She closed the photo and typed, "I hope she's okay." Jason replied with a question mark. "You mean that?" "Not forgiveness. I just don't have the energy to hate anymore." He sent a thumbs up. Ella set the phone down and tried to read. The words blurred. She watched leaves fall for a minute. A lot had changed in a year. Her mother's health was better. Not perfect, but she cooked again. Made dumplings last week, oversalted them, and they finished the whole plate anyway. Her dad got a warehouse supervisor job. Ground-level work, not construction. Last weekend, he took the family to the beach. Her sister ran into the waves for 2 hours, screaming with joy. The school had issued that public apology. Ella read it. Better than expected. Systemic failure. Inadequate response. Plus a new independent complaint system and anonymous reporting. Mr. Harrison was gone. The new homeroom teacher was young and told the class, My door is always open. Lisa ended up at the same university, different major. Ella had seen her twice in the dining hall. First time Lisa said hi, Ella nodded. Second time Lisa asked to sit across from her, Ella said okay. They ate in silence until Lisa said, I said I was sorry. Do you believe me? I believe you're saying it, Ella said. I can't say it's okay yet. Lisa was quiet, then nodded. Got it. Ella stood on her balcony that night and felt, not satisfaction, not sadness, just clarity. Time moves forward. Some people stay behind. She wouldn't pull them forward, but she wouldn't keep staring back either. A classmate called from outside the library window. Journalism major, waving 2 coffees. Ready for this afternoon's interview? Yeah. Ella closed the book. Her phone buzzed again. Frank, with a photo of his old computer, booted up. Still runs. Visiting the library this weekend. She smiled and typed, see you Saturday. She packed her bag and walked out into the autumn air. The wind cool. She buttoned her jacket. Leaves crunched underfoot. Her classmate handed over a coffee. She drank it black, bitter, perfect. Somewhere in the distance, a campus club was playing music. She caught the beat for a few steps light. Her encrypted folder, evidence, still lived on her phone. She hadn't opened it in months. She kept it like a finished journal, knew what was inside, didn't need to revisit. Her first real story for the journalism program was titled, The Price of Silence. Who closes their eyes to school bullying? She'd interviewed a dozen former victims, anonymized, letting them speak in their own words. Her editor had said it could run on the front page. In the lobby, she waited for the elevator, looked up at the white lights, thought about the spotlight in the Westwood Auditorium, so bright everything under it was stripped bare. Some lights are for that. The elevator arrived. She stepped in, pressed 5. The doors closed and the mirror caught her face. She looked calm, but there was something in her eyes. Not anger, not triumph. Something steady. 5th floor. The door opened. The newsroom was at the end of the hall. Doorway open. Someone calling. Ella, you're here. Check out this pitch. She walked fast. The hallway was full of sun, stretching her shadow long. By the last steps, she was almost running. Through the door, everyone looked up. Hands waved. A printed draft was offered. She took it, found a window seat, opened the file to page 1, and started reading. Leaves falling outside. Coffee steaming on the desk. Her pen marked a line. This emotion can go deeper. Then the next page, and the next. 2:35 p.m. Autumn wind through the crack in the window, cool, but the sun on her back was warm. Ella Mendez, 21 years old. College student, journalism major, aspiring reporter. She was writing,